time, Sareen. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. We're in the middle of VCPE heaven, so you've got Greylock Partners, Accel KKR, and a bunch of other companies right here on Sand Hill Road. Let's talk about how you feel about what's happening in India at this point in time. You've invested in Ola, you've invested in companies like Savan. Everyone's talking about the meltdown, valuations looking frothy. How do you feel about the story?
So look, first of all, congratulations. Young Turks turns 15. You were there right from the beginning, so huge congratulations to you. You know, India is a longer-term story here. If you measure India on what was India like last summer versus this summer, yeah, sure, valuations have gone sideways, down, but that was probably because the valuations were overzealous last year, and they're sort of finding their own space now. But India is not a one-year story. India is a 5-10 year story.
And you would know that with Vodafone.
I know that from Vodafone, and I just know it from sort of looking at the country and seeing it make progress, but having a long ways to go. So you and I have talked about the smartphone economy in the past, and 1 billion cell phones in India. Less than 200 million smartphones, but growing very rapidly, 100 million a year. Now, when you go from 20% penetration to 50% penetration, say by the year 2020, the whole economy in India is going to change. Just like Ola is changing how you think about transportation, or Savan is changing how you think about media entertainment. Every industry, Oyo Rooms is changing how you think about hotels. Daily Hunt is changing the way you think about newspapers, especially in a vernacular. So my view is a lot of things are going to change. So I'm very bullish on India, even though the macro is 6, 7, 8%, whatever the number is. But because the offline in India is so stressed, not enough malls, not enough hospitals, not enough banks, not enough this, that actually the pace at which the smartphone economy grows will be much faster than we've seen it here in the United States or in China or almost any other place. So I remain very bullish, admittedly, a little speed bump, and my view is when you drive
Just a little speed bump, you think?
My view is, look, when you drive a car, occasionally you have to touch the brakes to know that the brakes are there. You can't be on accelerator the entire time because you have to swerve, and when you have to swerve, you kind of hit the brakes, which is what I see going on in India at the present time.
But are you hitting the brakes now?
I am actually not, because my view is you got to invest through the cycle. So I invested in Ola, invested in Savan, I've invested in a company called Near, and we can talk about that, and a couple others that haven't quite yet been announced, but will be announced in the coming months. So my own view is, you got to go through the cycle here, and you can't time, just like you can't time getting into the market and coming out of a market. You have to keep, if you're a long-term investor, you got to stay the course.
So speaking of Ola, and let me talk to you about that, because that's the one that's grabbing the headlines at this point in time. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are going on with this diesel ban that's impacting operations in the National Capital Region, to this battle with Uber. You're also on the board of Ola today. From your perch, how do you see this Ola-Uber battle playing out?
So, first of all, from a consumer standpoint, two fantastic brands, two well-capitalized companies.
And two companies that are going at each other, in court and outside of court.
Look, I mean, if you're a consumer and you wanted to go from point A to point B, you can take an Ola car, you can do a share if you want. You want a bus, you can go on a bus. You want an auto rickshaw, you can do an auto rickshaw. There are so many choices. It's a good thing that, we've got two strong competitors here. Ola, first of all, has a fantastic entrepreneur in Bhavish and Ankit. Many of these businesses are more than technology businesses. They're really sort of...
But they want to be known as technology businesses. In fact, that's their claim that, we're tech companies.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're a brand. We would like 1 billion Indians to think of Ola as the company to think about when they think about traveling from point A to point B. My view is, if you can, through excellent customer experience, deliver that brand so that people think of you first, hit your app, within 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, you're getting a cab to your home or your office. Frankly, that's the company we want to build. We want to build a big branded company that has technology as an important core for what we deliver, but at the end of the day, it's all about the customer franchise that we're building here.
So what kind of metrics are you looking at when you look at a story like Ola, for instance? I mean, what did you look at when you decided to invest in Ola, and what do you continue to look at now to assess the performance in the market?
So, first of all, Ola has today over 300,000 drivers. Each of these drivers does multiple rides a day. So you think about how many rides are happening. Borrowing a term from the telecom industry, the ARPU, the average revenue per unit. What is the revenue? What is the cost? What is the technology base? And when you scale this business up, what kind of cash flows can you produce from this business? So my view is when you look at all of those metrics, you can come up pretty easily with this being one of the few really big market cap companies in India. And, you know, market cap's not everything, but if you think about the number of Indians who use Ola today, it's in the tens of millions. So for a 4 or 5 year old company to be able to deliver a customer experience in the tens and millions, that's a pretty big deal.
So in terms of the road to profitability, I mean, you were talking about the ARPUs for companies like Ola, but, you know, how patient is capital going to be for companies like this to start to deliver on the profitability promise?
So, look, all boards, all venture capitalists, everybody would like profitability to come yesterday or today or tomorrow at the latest. But you've got a competitor who is pressing down, wanting market share. By the way, there was an interesting Truecaller market share survey that put them at 72%, which I was very pleased to see. I'm not sure about sort of the methodology, etc. But the point is, Ola is a big player in India, competing against a global player like Uber, and we're winning customers' minds, we're winning the customer franchise, we're winning the driver war, as it were. My view is this is going to continue for a while, till such time things settle down, and we can go back to what I'll call normal economics, where the driver makes money, the customer has a wonderful ride, and Uber stays in second place, and Ola delivers very good cash flows.
But since you're on the board, let me ask you this, because there's a bunch of speculation around Ola being sold to Uber and consolidation on the cards. Is there any truth to that story?
I am not aware of that at all.
And you don't believe that this would be the opportunity for a company like Ola to sell out, or Bhavish to sell out?
I am not aware of any conversations. Like I said, we have Truecaller market share 70 or so percent. We're doing great. We're growing the business, and I think this is the path that Bhavish is 30 years old. Bhavish, if you were to do this, what are you going to do next? You're on to building a fabulous platform here. Continue to do it, because somebody needs to do it to reduce the pain of transportation in India.
What made you want to bet on Savan?
So, first of all, again, it's the entrepreneur, Rishi Malhotra, Param, Vin, all fabulous people. And again, you think about the smartphone economy. The smartphone economy, people have smartphones. Indians in particular love entertainment, love music, love their movies, love their TV shows. Somebody has to bring this to them in a streaming format with an experience that's good on 2G, 3G, 4G, has really good content, music labels, etc. But they're also beginning to develop their own content, whether it's in sports or in comedy or in other realms. So my view is fabulous. Bring to an Indian consumer streaming service with the best experience. So the thing that's common about Ola and Savan is sort of the leading experience in India, and that's Savan.
Everyone's been talking about consolidation in the Indian mobile space. you think that now, given the fact that at least the regulatory issues seem to be behind us, there's another round of spectrum auctions around the corner, but do you think that this is now sort of the next phase of growth that we're going to see?
For sure. I mean, if you said to me, does the Indian telecom mobile communications need to consolidate? Yes. There was a time there were 7, 8, 9 players. That's way too many. In the United States, we have 4. In Britain, we've got 4. You know, all over the world, you've got 4, not 8 or 9. Because all these companies have to invest massive sums of money into building the infrastructure. And you can't do that when you've got 9 players out there. So I think it's a great time to consolidate. Equally, the next phase of what mobile communications is going to deliver, which is 4G LTE, is going to be fantastic for consumers. Video is going to be far more prevalent because you can't really do good video on 3G or 2G. So I think that's going to open up a lot of things. If you think about Internet of Things, Internet of Things is going to be enabled by 4G. So whether it's a Jio or Vodafone or Airtel or Idea or whoever, these companies are very important companies in building the infrastructure and the ecosystem for the smartphone economy to flourish.
I don't know if you've seen the net neutrality regulations that the TRAI has put out in India, or the guidelines. Do you believe that that's going to be restrictive for mobile phone service companies as well as the likes of Facebook, etc., looking to expand in the Indian market? Or do you believe that this is the way to go? I mean, they've done away with zero rating, or said that zero rating is not acceptable, at least to the regulator in India, whereas it is here in the US and as well as in the EU. So do you believe that the guidelines are perhaps more restrictive?
So, you know, you and I have talked about this once before. Net neutrality is a very geographic specific concept. If you're having spectrum auctions on the one hand and wanting the Vodafones and the Airtels to pay for that, plus all the infrastructure they have to build, and yet somebody else can use that infrastructure for free, there's something not fair about that whole equation. So my view is you have to look at it from a level playing field standpoint. You have to look at it from a sort of a fairness point of view, and you have to look at it from a net neutrality point of view. And every country comes up with a slightly different version of what they call net neutrality. And my view is the TRAI has spoken, and that's sort of kind of the rule. It doesn't seem terribly different from what I would have expected them to do.
Okay, let me then finally wrap up and ask you about how confident you feel about the India story. We of course talked about the smartphone economy, but you know, 7.5–8%, we can argue about the numbers. The government's now in office for about 2 years. We're reaching the halfway mark. How would you assess the performance?
I think it's a good performance. You know, the expectations when Mr. Modi came in were so high that I'm not sure even a superhuman could have done everything that was expected of him.
So since we're talking about politics, President Trump, a real possibility now here in the U.S.?
Well, it looks like he's the likely Republican nominee. And yes, it'll be likely Hillary Clinton versus Trump.
Donald Trump, so that's going to be an exciting battle.
It's going to be very exciting.
To watch.
And entertaining.
And entertaining. Arun Sareen, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you back in India, and we hope that you're going to tell us first about the announcements that you make.
I'll be happy to.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.